All right. We are live and representing both sides of the Atlantic today. We have Nate, who now lives next to the Gulf of America, I guess you would say. So I'm going to be the East Coast of the United States. And then all the way across the pond, we have Nik Starow representing all of Scandinavia just by himself.
Yeah, just by myself, which is correct. I mean, look at this. This is 1,000 years of Scandinavian inbreeding over here.
Oh my. Nik, I gotta say, when I was traveling last year and I got a chance to go to Iceland and whatnot, I started to learn if you look at like Iceland used to be a Denmark colony. Greenland currently is owned by Denmark.
Yep.
And somebody else pointed out, well, yeah, so was a bunch of England at one point owned by Denmark. And I didn't realize that out of the Scandinavian countries, out of all of you, that Denmark really kind of got around a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have the Danish Vikings. They traveled west and all the way down to Spain, even into the Mediterranean. Then you have the Swedes. We, for some odd reason, thought, hey, let's go where it's colder. And so we went east and founded the Kiev Rus. We went down to Istanbul and, yeah, probably further as well. And then you have the Norwegians who were insane. Those were the Berserk. That's where the Berserkers come from.
Okay.
Yeah, pure warriors.
All right, well, my favorite thought about Vikings, and then we'll definitely get into the law, is the delicatessen or the wonderful dish called lutefisk. Yep. And the story behind it is hilarious because the people got tired of the Vikings coming in, and Vikings just really means pirates, from what I understand.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
But the Vikings would come in, take all their food, and they go, you know what we're going to do? We're going to dump lye all over the food. That way it's poisoned and the Vikings won't eat it. Well, the Vikings were like, hey, this is delicious. And it became a staple of their diet.
Yep.
That says everything, in my opinion, about the Vikings.
Hey, I wonder what we can do with this. And we have the lutefisk and we have surströmming, because we are hardened people who, for the past 60 years, got a bit woke. But before that, we have a long and proud history of war. The pre-Viking age, because Viking age is just between 750 to 1056. If you go back enough years, you have one of the tribes, would you call it, which is about 3500 BC, was called the Blood Axe tribe. So it's a
warm and loving tribe. I think that's
very, very warm and loving. And we just went over to the British Isles to park there, and hello, we are just passing by. Oh, look, a church. I wonder what's in there, and stuff.
All right, so
we didn't bring back the ugly ones. Let's just say that. Yeah.
Good. All right, to shift to the headlines of today, I know one of us was actually responsible and did homework, and that would not be me. That would be the illustrious Nathaniel Brotti. And Nate, today we're going to be talking about birthright citizenship and some of the SCOTUS oral arguments and social media addiction, and what else we have? Oh, the conversion therapy. And let's see, Justice Jackson, I guess, is going to come up a couple times today, because didn't she have an argument in the birthright citizenship comparing citizenship to pickpocketing in Japan?
Yeah, I think she was So she was trying to make the argument, I believe, because the birthright citizen argument all boils down to the to in the 14th Amendment. It says what is it? All persons that are subject to the jurisdiction of and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So that's what the ones that want to keep the law the same, they're saying when you come here illegally or legally, you are subject to the jurisdiction thereof. If you commit, and her argument was if you're in Japan and commit a crime of pocketing, even if you're there illegally, you're still subject to their the jurisdiction thereof. So your legal status doesn't matter depending on your subject to the jurisdiction thereof, where the Trump administration's argument is subject to the jurisdiction thereof means that you're in the country legally. That's what makes you subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So if you're here illegally, you're not. The other argument I think that Jackson was that the proponents, well, both sides were trying to make was that let's say if you have a baby born here in the United States, and that baby, and there was no birthright citizenship. So let's say the parents were Mexican. What would that baby's nationality be?
Mexican.
It would be Mexican. I would suspect. So just like Ted Cruz, for instance, he was born in Canada, but his parents were American. They were on like on vacation.
Well,
but
yeah, we have Americans that are on vacation having babies all the time, and somehow those children are still American, and vice versa with other countries.
Yeah, but so what they're saying is that those children could be, let's say, if they were from Palestine. This would be if the children were from Palestine essentially is stateless. There is no state of Palestine. So if you had two people who are stateless who come to have children here in America, then you would have the child would continue to be stateless. So they were saying that you have those type of quirks where you could have stateless children being born in the United States, not subject to the, but they would still be subject to the jurisdiction.
And by the way, that actually I think would be in the spirit of what I believe was intended. And you can jump all over me, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this situation created because of the end of slavery, where we had stateless people here in the United States because slaves weren't citizens, but they were born here, and they were stateless. So in order to accommodate the situation, I said, okay, you know what? Everybody born here is now a citizen. They get a birthright citizenship. But that magical word stateless could have solved this whole problem going forward. If they said anyone who was stateless and born here could be a citizen. By the way, if it happened to include the Palestinians, I'd be okay with it. I feel like that would be sort of a compromise versus this touristic. There's literally birthright tourism going on. I did not realize that almost 10% of newborns, I think in like 2023 or 2024, were from people flying in from China and other places. So while everybody's thinking automatically Mexico, no, there's people flying in from China and from all over the world who are doing this. I think that the stateless aspect should be addressed.
Yeah, I think so. Just for the history of the 14th Amendment, African slaves who were brought here were sold, so they were property. So there wasn't anything about citizenship for property, right? Your car or whatever doesn't have really any citizenship. So then the argument by the Republicans was starting becoming made: all men are created equal, so forth, so forth. So now you have all these people here, but they weren't legally immigrated here. They were essentially bought, and now they're here. And it wasn't just that group of people. Remember, these people have been here for generations. Slavery had been going on since the 1600s here. So you had all these people here who had been literally born in the United States generation after generation. So the 14th, so when you hear the subject to the jurisdiction thereof, this was supposedly to address specifically the stateless, natural born people in the United States. And the carve out was the Native Americans, because that would have also applied to Native Americans. They were born here. So the carve out in the 14th Amendment was not not Native Americans. But Native Americans have become American citizens through a statute that was passed by Congress that made them American.
Yeah, they're both.
Citizens,
They're citizens of their reservation as well as the United States. They're kind of dual citizens,
but just
in a weird way.
And just so everybody understands this, I call it two types of American citizenship. There's really only one type, but there are two ways you can obtain it. You can obtain it through birthright citizenship, like we've been talking about. You're born to American parents in America, born in American land. And then the second type is a statutory one. You'll hear people from Puerto Rico. They are statutory citizens. In other words,
right.
Before, if you were born in the island of Puerto Rico, you weren't a U.S. citizen. You were what's known as a U.S. national. That's actually what happens now in American Samoa. That's an American territory.
How about Guam?
If you're Guam, you're an American citizen.
Okay.
Because they've passed the act. So if you're born on the American Samoa, you are a U.S. national. You are not an American citizen. If you want to become an American citizen, you'd have to go through the naturalization process. And that was the same thing for Puerto Rico. But back in, I think, the 1900s, after the Supreme Court cases, the U.S. Congress passed an act. It's called the Organic Act. And that said that anyone born on the territory of Puerto Rico are American citizens by birth. So that gave those 3 million Puerto Ricans birthright citizenship in the United States, not through the constitutional workings, but through an act of Congress. And that's the same thing they did with the Native Americans. Now, going back to the original idea of the 14th Amendment, we have people here born in the United States year after year, and those people are essentially stateless. Slaves were essentially stateless. They weren't citizens. So the 14th Amendment was to correct that particular thing. And it was, again, this is the Trump team's argument, it wasn't supposed to allow someone to come to the country illegally, have a baby, and then their citizenship is to the country of Mexico, but their baby citizenship is to the United States.
Which is insane.
That's not what it was made for. So that's the big argument right now.
Well, now let's visit this with a European perspective, because I mean, and Nik's been sitting very patiently, but I mean, am I wrong, Nik? And you may know more about Europe than I do. I don't want to, strain your knowledge, but isn't it kind of like that people in Europe, if they go on vacation and have a baby, they still retain their citizenship?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and this, when you go historically, there's been and there is still slavery, and there are more slaves today than at any point in time in history in the world.
In Libya,
now,
especially
historically, it goes against my nature, but this is the change from when people was property to not property, and it's been like that all over the world. I mean, my ancestors brought over people which we called träl, and worked them until we had to go over to the British Isles and get new ones. So historically, it's this in the Ottoman Empire. I mean, the slave trade between European countries. So this was a humanization of property historically over here. But
wait, Nik, are you quoting actual history? I have, from what I understand, the United States created slavery itself in 1619, and it never existed anywhere else. It was just the evil nation of the United States.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was writing on my new fictional story over here.
Okay.
Yeah, but when it comes to citizenship, now historically we abandoned slavery in Europe as a continent. I mean, we still had slavery up into the 20th century. Belgium had it in Africa up until 1919, I believe.
Brazil had slavery till late 1800s.
Yeah, and there are countries all over the world that still has it with property and stuff. But if we go by the Western Hemisphere, let's say that, most of us abolished it in the 18th century. I mean,
1800s, 19th century. Yeah.
Yeah, 18. And you guys kind of, the United States kind of led it and make it happen. Now, some countries sped it up and everything, but let's go back.
England was first. I mean, technically,
Yeah,
the UK,
technically, yeah.
England banished slavery, I think, 20 or 30 years before the United States did, and
they saw the writing on the wall and said, "We are going to beat them at least once."
But to circle to the citizenship, we agree completely on slavery. But I'm just trying to get the European perspective, because I feel like we have a weird standard as it's been applied, that people come here and they're born and they're suddenly a citizen. So now, can I go to Sweden with a pregnant wife, have a child, and have a dual citizen baby in Sweden?
No, you still have to. We still have to be naturalized in Sweden. You have to be here for a number of years and then apply for citizenship.
So you don't get citizenship on birthright. What about residency? If the person's born there, would they just be a resident, or what
you have two types of residency? You have the temporary and the permanent residency. Temporary is refugees.
Okay.
Permanent is, you can go from temporary to permanent. You have to apply for the change. So it is every step of the way you have to apply for, and then there's an investigation, and then it's deemed, okay, can this person be a citizen? So basically it's a remnant from the old Roman Empire. You earn your right to citizenship.
Yeah,
like the cat there. Yeah, cat is officially a citizen. It was born there. His parents were there.
He owns this place. I just work here.
Well, the one thing in the oral arguments here at the Supreme Court was that there is precedent for birthright citizenship. I sent it to the notes earlier. It's Wong Kim Ark, and it essentially established physical birth on U.S. soil establishes jurisdiction for anyone to be a citizen here. So essentially, they're saying that satisfies that jurisdiction requirement, because in that case, there was something very interesting that happened. Both the parents were here legally, and they had a child born here, and then they were trying to establish that, hey, we are subject to the jurisdiction. We're here legally. We followed all the procedures. So we essentially said we want to be subject to the jurisdiction. We agreed to it. And now we had a child here, and that's physically born here. So just that child should be an American citizen. Go ahead.
Just so I understand. So would it be like, let me just give a scenario and you can tell me, like two people who are a couple are here in the United States on a green card.
Yes.
They've got a long-term residency. The wife gets pregnant. They have a child here. They've been living here for several years, and then they have a child here, and they are legally here with a green card. Would that be an example similar to that?
Yeah, or you could have somebody who's here on vacation they take a 3-month vacation and happens to have a baby. Oh. It's the fact that they're legally here, and they're legally saying we want to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. That's what would give their child American citizenship, because their child would be like their parents, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, in kind of this voluntary way. Because the
vacation thing drives me bonkers, because that's part of the problem. But amount of time, I think that could be relevant. Nick just explained that, even for residency standards, it depends on how long, that they've got to apply, and then they got to be here X amount of time. So, I mean, some of this could be, if not resolved, it could be toned down if they tighten this up a bit, like the example of the permanent residency you just mentioned, Nate, or people who are actually residents that are here. If somebody's been here for a few years legally and paying taxes in society and everything else, and then they have a kid, I don't feel like that's the same thing as birth tourism, or whatever the term of the day is. I think that they're completely apart. Is that something that could be addressed and just get some standards? That's where I'm going.
I think that's where the court is trying to do. They're trying to make a standard. So is the standard generally for the Constitution is that the Congress is the one that does jurisdiction. So even the court, they can change the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, for instance. So they deal. So when it comes to jurisdiction, they usually do that through statute. So what the Trump administration is saying is that essentially we want to be able to legislate what jurisdiction is, right? So in other words, even if you're born here, to be subject to the jurisdiction, what does that mean in practice? And that would mean you're here for a certain amount of time. You can put all those restrictions of it, even though we have to kind of define it. But so Trump's executive order was him defining it. He was saying, I'm defining it.
Mm-hmm.
And the court is saying, we get to define what it is. And that's the battle. Now that's the battle now. Who gets to define what that particular, and then who gets to put the restrictions if there's going to be any on it. So right now, obviously, the Democrats say, if you're 9 months pregnant and you come across the border and that baby pops out, it's a U.S. citizen versus, or whether there's going to be some process.
Well, you know what though? Okay, so maybe I'm interpreting this wrong. This is a good thing. However, somebody in the chat saying he was ham-fisted in the executive order. All that may be true, but the fact is, we never talked about this. This is actually now finally going in front of the court and being discussed and being visited. So maybe there can be standards that did not exist before. Is that a fair thought?
Yeah. But I want to make it very clear, though. The argument that the two sides, one side's argument is that broad jurisdiction. If you're born in American soil, you are a citizen, even though that's not even true, because there are some places in America you can be born on American soil and not be a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, diplomats.
As we said, even with
or territories,
with the territory of American Samoa. If you're born in American Samoa, you're not a U.S. citizen.
Which, by the way, is ironic. It's so ironic that you point that out, because the way it's been applied right now is somebody from China could be 9 months pregnant, go here, boom, have a baby. Suddenly the baby's a citizen, but an American Samoan, which is actually an American territory, who was born, is not. That's
correct.
Bonkers.
Yes, they are not. They wouldn't be a citizen. That is bonkers. Matter of fact, it's so wild that the person from American Samoa can go to the mainland, have the baby, get their citizenship, and then go back to Samoa as a citizen. So it's crazy like that. And a lot of that tourism you're talking about is actually going to the Northern Mariana Islands. So that's where most of their tourism comes from people in China wanting to do that birth tourism. So the second question, where we sort of have to decide either broad jurisdictional interpretation, or the government says that there has to be two consenting parties to jurisdiction. It has to be both the government consenting to let you in and you consenting to follow the rules. And if you have those two aspects of it, hey, you're legally here, we're allowing you in, and you're saying, well, I'm going to follow the rules of your country, then that makes you subject to the jurisdiction. And then if you have a child, you are then, that would be a citizen. So that's the fight there. So now I don't know what most people agree with. I believe that Trump is going to lose the birthright citizenship because this is 200 years of precedent. It's going to be hard to overcome. But I do think they have the better argument in terms of right now what it is, it's just too broad. And by doing this type of, will allow, if you're here, if you follow the process to get here legally, one of the benefits of doing that is birthright citizenship. But
which, by the way, would be a win. I mean, technically, he could win even when losing, because everything is a negotiation, right? Think of anchoring, and you even said you've got one side who says, I don't care. As soon as the baby takes a breath, if it's here in the United States, boom, it's a citizen. That's one side of the argument. The other side is saying, oh, no. The parents have to be citizens, da. Well, even if it's somewhere in the middle, it can help alleviate some of the strain. For example, the whole tourism angle, I think, should be eliminated. I don't think that's unfair at all. Anybody, in my opinion, should be able to see that floating to a country for the purpose of having a child to make that child a citizen is just going against the spirit of all intentions and all laws. It's a total loophole type of situation. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I would think that would be fair. I think it's, and again, this is whether the government is this an automatic thing, or does the government have the ability to regulate this in some way? Is it a free for all? And I think I'm on the side. I know Trump is going to lose. I know this is not going to happen, but I do appreciate the fact that they went after the argument to see if they can narrow this a little bit more, because right now I do think this is it's too extreme. It's literally too extreme. It's so crazy. There's an island in the middle of the Pacific. It's named Palmyra Atoll. It's an uninhabited island in the middle of the Pacific, 500 miles off of, actually I think about 1,000 miles from Hawaii and 1,000 miles from Guam. It's like we're in the middle of nowhere. If anyone happens to shipwreck there from any country, and if that person has a baby on that piece of crap island, that baby is a U.S. citizen.
Exactly. And this is
that's how crazy it is. And that's what they're saying. There should be something there,
which would be a giant win. So like, okay, this person here, literally pointed out, and thank you so much. I mean, $20 is good. It's huge. There are over 500 Chinese companies built solely on birth tourism. One Chinese billionaire has over 100 children through paid surrogacy born on the U.S. soil. Birthright citizenship must end if America is to survive. Now, that is a strong viewpoint, but I think there's a valid point. And remember I said earlier, and I don't know if it's exact, but the 10%, if let's say we can knock the newborns from 10% to 0.01%, that's a win. That would be a huge difference. So I understand we're not going to get the whole Trump thing. But again, if we could just get some standards, that would be nice. How about if we could be like Sweden or Europe or any other country in the world? If we could get closer to that, I think that would still be a win. It wouldn't solve the whole problem, but it would mitigate it.
Tell Bernie Sanders it's socialism to end birthright.
There you go.
Citizenship.
Does it, Nik? For before we transition to the next thing, for you, the left always holds up your country as the pinnacle of socialism. Of that you guys are 1,000% socialist. We need to be more like you. Essentially atheistic, non-religious, everybody is love, all this stuff, right? But the fact of the matter is that I don't think I think what they're failing to realize is that most of the countries they talk about in this way as being these things actually have laws against, like for instance, like we were talking about birthright citizenship. You guys don't have birthright citizenship. That's crazy. But here they'll say that we're being racist for saying we shouldn't have birthright citizenship, right? But then another end, they don't know that you guys are staunch capitalists, right? You guys are of an open market.
We don't have inheritance tax, for instance.
Nice.
Yeah, because why?
It's already taxed money.
Why do you have to pay the government for wanting to leave your children something? Why?
Well, especially because you already are taxed on the income to begin with, and that's the problem with it. It's like somebody earns like a whole lifetime of income. They've been paying taxes, doing everything else. When they give it to the kids, tax it again. That doesn't make sense. It's already been taxed.
We don't tax luck, which means we keep all our lottery winnings.
Wow.
Yeah. We have more. We are one of few countries in the world that can compete with the number of billionaires per capita. I mean, yeah.
Question, and you can correct me on this, Nik. From what I understand, you also have a work requirement. Like you don't just hand out welfare for anybody and everybody. You could just say, I live in Sweden, so you just got to buy me groceries and everything else. That you actually have requirements saying, no, your asset better be working. I don't care what it is. Or am I wrong?
Well, it depends. I mean, if by injury, by unemployment. So let's go with unemployment. You receive full unemployment benefits for 100 days. Then it gets lowered, and then after 180 days, you get into it. Okay, what are you actively doing? And then it comes in the requirements. You have to seek this amount of jobs per week. So there's always, you have 100 days to solve it yourself. let's pay out unemployment. But if you just sit home, do nothing, yeah, you're going to run out of money.
Nate, what's unemployment here? Isn't it like a crazy amount, like a year or some? I mean,
I think you only get 6 months, and then I think you can file for extensions, because don't forget COVID knocks it all off, because remember before COVID it was 6 months. Then some people were on there for like almost 2 years, and then,
right.
So yeah, it became crazy. But I think the U.S. has the most social programs. That's what about. To be honest, the most socialized everything is here in New York. For God forsake, New York City was putting people in $600 hotel rooms because they had the right to shelter laws and stuff like that. So I think we have a nice mix, even though I think people mistake the social programs for the economy. The economy is 100% capitalist. I call it Darwin evolution on steroids. The strong survive, the weak will be killed and eaten, and we move forward, right? That's capitalism in a nutshell, and that's what we practice. But then when you're talking about government and those social programs, that's where I think the United States and people in the United States fail to realize we have a lot of socialist ideas and programs, that Social Security, the Army, right? Yeah, all this stuff is socialized. But I think that the problem is that people like Zohar Mamdani in New York, they want to take those socialist principles and apply them to the economy, and that's where you get the tension. That's where you get the tension, because $30 minimum wage. Well, that's going to destroy. That's them trying to socialize the labor force and those type of things. So that's where you get the tension here, is between the socialization of the economy versus keeping it a capitalist economy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
And over here, we don't have a by law government minimum wage, because we don't trust the government of doing that, because government change, the union doesn't.
You see, they're smart.
So we have the lowest negotiated salary, but so we don't trust the government for that. So that's another difference between this mandated.
That's the way it should be. That's actually the market deciding, Nick, because when you're negotiating, I mean, the company's literally saying, look, this is what I got. Hold a gun to my head. This is it. I mean, what are you going to do about it? Not just an arbitrary boom. Hey, you're going to pay this. Okay, fine. I guess I'm out of business tomorrow. I mean, it just seems bonkers.
Yeah. I mean, the negotiations are centralized. The main negotiations, we have this centralized trade agreement, and then we go local. Okay, what can we do with this piece of paper, with this company with 5 employees? Okay, what can we do with it?
Go ahead, Nate.
I don't want to take you to super cat. This case at least opens the conversation. I do think, though, if we want to change the 14th Amendment, means even if it's difficult, amend the Constitution, close the loopholes the right way. Well, but if you're a conservative, people have been saying that for years when it comes to abortion and everything. Just amend the Constitution. So you're right. But I'll also say this. The Constitution isn't what the words written on a page. Marbury v. Madison. It's what the court says it is. Marbury v. Madison. So no matter what that document says, what the judges of the Supreme Court says it means, is actually what it means. That's why we have all these confusions. I am what's that?
Tejano, I think.
Tejano. And mass illegal immigration from America is what allowed Texas to rebel from Mexico. Illegal immigration. That's true. Yes. Illegal immigrant children cannot be allowed citizenship if this country is to survive. Well, we've been allowing it for the past, and that's the historical argument is going to be for the past 100 and whatever years we have in the country.
Right. But and somebody countered it, and it is a interesting argument, because yes, it was there, but the ease of travel
was different
during much of that time wasn't quite the same. Also, we didn't have the social programs that have been accumulating up over and over and over and over with time. For example, around the turn of the 20th century or whatever, there was no Social Security, there was no Medicare, Medicaid, all of these things. So honestly, it didn't really make a whole lot of difference if somebody moved here and got a job or they didn't get a job. it was just a competitive market, whether they could hire them or not. There was no social safety net that was falling to these people. So I would argue that times have changed the parameters, and that's why some of the top libertarians, oh God, I think Friedman is one, or somebody who said, like, I believe in open borders, except because of social, safety net programs, we can't afford open borders because it's just not the same situation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, because now it's just like pandemics now. Before, pandemics took years because of the slowness of travel, but now it does make it a different issue, and technology. But then I think Elf's point makes it even more important. Where, okay, so amend the Constitution if there's a real problem, and amend it to clear this thing up. So it's one of those things where I think the Constitution was made hard to be amended, and I think that sometimes
it's impossible. I can't see another amendment going through. We're too polarized as a nation. It would be so difficult to find something that all the state or 2/3 of the states can agree on, and a majority in both houses. I mean,
voter IDs.
Maybe something with space. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What?
No, I said voter ID. 70%. Well, the 80% of Democrats, 80% of Republicans.
But you know what? But the politicians aren't agreeing.
Yeah, the politicians don't agree. But it's funny. It's just crazy. All right, so we have social media addiction.
Yeah, let's go to
therapy. Social media addiction or conversion therapy.
I think social media addiction, and that gets a little European perspective, because they get to face the same addiction we do. So let's make this an international incident. I think Facebook and Instagram are used in Sweden as much as they are here.
Yeah.
All right. So this is where I kind of got to go into. This is towards law school. So please, people, I was a law school professor. So I'm going to do this like I would do a law school class in terms of just introducing this case.
Can you first say what torts law school actually means?
Torts in law school those are the things like defamation, where these are civil actions between two people. You. And you're looking at a lot of your negligence claims and things. So that's what a tort is. So in this particular case, this is a tort of foreseeability and duty of care. So the issue that came, the name of the case is KGMV Meta Platforms and Google LLC, who owns YouTube, and this is in California.
Is it Google or Alphabet? Because I thought Alphabet.
It was Google LLC.
Okay.
So Google LLC owns. So it's Alphabet owns Google LLC, and Google LLC owns YouTube.
Okay.
That's what I'm assuming. So obviously Google, YouTube, and all the platforms said. So what happened? The platforms designed the algorithms, and the algorithms are designed by scientists and engineers. And the goal of the algorithm is to make you as an adult or children as addicted to the platform as possible. So what they do is they actually have models, and you can actually see when they're successful, because what they do is they patent their addictive models so they can be protected and no one else can use them.
Right.
So what they'll do, they literally file trademarks, and you can find the trademarks on things like loot boxes and things of that nature. There are companies who design that, and then whenever you see a loot box, they're getting paid because they designed this thing to make it.
Let's talk about what a loot box is, just so we get it down and make sure I understand it. A loot box is something that many of you have maybe faced when you try to cancel a subscription, where you say, okay, you have to dig. How do I cancel a subscription? And then you find it and you say, okay, click cancel. And then it says, oh, you want to time out your subscription for 2 months then. And you go, no, I want to cancel. So then it loops you back to the initial subscription. Or is this just dark entries, or is that something different? I want to make sure.
No, you're right. Well, a loot box is like when you go in, this is the spinning like box, and then you hit it, and what they designed it to do. So the loot boxes are like those the what's it called in Atlantic City or Las Vegas?
So slot machine.
The slot machine. So it's like the slot machine, and when you go, it'll be like, but this is an example of one of them, one type, where it's like some type, it makes you believe that there's some type of benefit if you stop it. So you'll hit the button, and what they found is that they've noticed that if you play the game for like the first 5 spins, you're likely going to hit one of the biggest amounts, and that is to get you hooked. They found that if they have people hit for the $1 million, for the million coins or tokens right at the beginning, they'll use all those tokens and then
Right
always be
back
trying to get, because they say, hey, I hit it before. It's possible. So that's how the loot boxes work. That's how they would draw you in. You would think that you would always, but I can hit another million, not knowing that it's extremely difficult to hit 1 million because they've actually let you do it initially. So these designs were designed in the algorithm to be, and most people probably who are watching this channel or watching YouTube have experienced it. The scrolling they do, for the infinite scrolls and things. Yes, that's another thing that they found that was highly addictive, and it triggers like chemical reaction in the brain and all this other stuff. So Meta and YouTube first argued that this is a 230 thing, right? That they're platforms, but then the judge said, well, hold on, 230 would protect you if it was someone else putting loot boxes on. But since you are designing the product and designing the algorithms, 230 doesn't protect you. You have to now go to court. So their 230 argument was dismissed because they were like, it's not about what you put on the platform, but how you design the platform itself. Now, so
which is appropriate, by the way, because 230 is essentially the comment section or a bulletin board argument. That has nothing to do with how information is fed to people to get them addicted.
Yes. Even us putting videos up, if we say something, YouTube couldn't be sued for it because 230 would protect them.
Exactly.
Protect us. So first, the plaintiff said, okay, well, now we know you've designed this thing to be as addictive as possible. So that's what they had to prove. So in the United States, we have a very famous law, and this is where they hit everybody with. Everybody gets killed with this. It's called failure to warn. And that's why you see those drug company commercials where it's like you can get scabies, death, gonorrhea, like all they list all these horror shows and stuff that you can get. But if you take the pill, your teeth will be whiter, right? It's like take the pill, you get white teeth, but your gallbladder will blow up, something like that. So that failure to warn is insult in law, where if you don't warn your customers of potential downfalls or things of that nature, like this, if smoking cigarettes can get you addicted, that's why on every pack it says addiction warning, right? Or if you're gambling, you could be addicted to gambling. That's why if you go into casinos, 1-800-GAMBLER. If you're a gambler, you know 1-800-GAMBLER because it's on everything. Why? Because they're warning you gambling. And this goes all the way to a point where, unless something is just very obvious, you don't have to warn someone, but generally you got to warn people. So that's what the plaintiff sued for. They said, well, listen, since you've designed it and you designed it to be addictive and addiction is harmful, you failed to warn us, and now you got to be paid. So the jury agreed that, yes, you failed to warn these people that you've designed this product to be horribly addictive, and these people got addicted. What happened to them, exactly what you designed it to happen, and you didn't warn them, so now you got to pay them $3 million. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, it's just one, these are billion-dollar companies. Oh, no, $3 million to one person. But for this woman, she was on for years. She was on Facebook and doing she had proved she had got a diagnosis from a psychologist that she's addicted to social media and all that stuff. So what they said was that because of addicted and she was a victim, she got $3 million. But based on the stats on her stats on what she did, she's essentially like a normal user. Yep. 3 million times. Do you think they can find 100 people like that? Do you think they can find 1,000 people like that? Do you think they can find 1 million people like that?
No, yes, and I want to pull Nik into this because the EU tends to like to jump in and legislate on a lot of different things. For example, what kind of port do you have in your iPhone? The EU very much drove, hey, you're going to have USB-C. There's going to be no more Lightning port. So I'm curious because again, Facebook, YouTube, all and Instagram are used in the Europe. Go ahead, Nik. Is EU looking at this?
Well, I mean, at the moment we have the Digital Services Act, the DSA. It's been around for about 15 years now. I was actually working in the European Union as a documents analyst as this proposal was prepared for legislation. This is now transitioning into the Digital Fairness Act to regulate manipulative dark patterns.
Dark patterns. That's what I was looking for. That's the term when you try to unsubscribe for something. Dark patterns. Thank you. Everybody write that down and look it up. It's an amazing, sick thing.
Yeah. So now this includes, I have to go back to my notes here, targeting addictive design, so suggestion from the EU, it's not legislation yet, turning off infinite scroll, autoplay, push notifications by default. Let's see here. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, more or less change the algo mother. But when it comes to the EU subscription cancellation rights, now we have already at place a 14-day cooling off period. You have the right to withdraw from any subscription service within 14 days without giving a reason. But it is now suggested in the EU, still not. It's not up until. I mean, it's not in the Parliament yet. But more or less, what they are going to suggest is you have to make it as easy to cancel as it is to subscribe, and regulate that by law.
By the way, I'm going to hijack for a second and talk about a particularly pernicious company, and I think they did lose recently in court, which is good, and that would be Adobe. And I will explain why Adobe is a nasty operator on this front. So the way Adobe works is you say, okay, I want to have the Adobe suite of whatever it is, say $50, $60 a month or whatever it is, right? Here's the rub. You sign up for a trial, you use it for however long it is, 30 days, month, I don't know what it is, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pay for it. I'll pay for a month. You know what? I'm liking this. I'm going to do it. Then you go to cancel after that first month. And you find out that you owe them $500 and some odd, and you're saying, whoa, what do you mean? I thought this was, $50, $60 a month. And you come to find out that it is not. Every contract with Adobe, at least for a while, is a yearly contract that is broken into monthly payments. So people would get caught up, do the trial, and then be caught into an annual agreement. And not even know that they were doing that. I'm wondering if that's something you looked into with your dark patterns, or have you heard about that?
I think that's already regulated but not enforced. Is that maybe a bit like you need to give warning. For instance, if you subscribe within the European Union, you have to have it on there. This is a 12-month subscription, but we advertise it as this is the cost per month. But it has to be there. Now,
does it have to be clear, or can they bury it in the, on page 29?
As you subscribe, it should be front and center. That's the idea, at least, but it's not enforced yet. Now, the what do you call it, the fees or the penalties can be up to 6% of the global revenue.
Global, wow.
Global.
Yeah, see, that's where I think you're going too far.
But every time they enforce it, you guys get pissed off because they fined Elon Musk 250 million euros, and you got no free speech. No, it's a product marketed to the European Union.
Well, because the global it does start to encroach. If you say up to 100% of your EU, okay, or 6% of your EU, but when you say global, then that's now dipping into other jurisdictions. You know, like let's say that India, obviously I'm thinking the United States, they might get more money, but maybe they make more money in India because it's a very particularly popular product there, or China, and the EU is suddenly saying, yeah, we're going to take 6% of all of that too. Nah, that doesn't seem quite appropriate.
It never does. I think the idea is also the EU saying fair warning. It could be up to 6% of global revenue. So just do what we say, more or less.
Well, one thing I do want to make clear about the outcome of the Facebook case. So obviously they found that both the defendants liable, 70% Facebook, 30% YouTube, for failing to warn. They awarded $3 million in compensatory damages. These were for the stuff that she suffered, and they also gave $3 million for punitive damages. So that's $6 million. So $6 million. So if you times that times 100 people, that's 600 million. 1,000 people, that's $6 billion.
But there's 10, a million people who qualify, probably
10,000. Yeah, 10,000. So obviously this is and this is not only social media addiction, but then you have video game addiction. So this now goes into all of these platforms. And again, this is just holding them accountable for designing something that they knew was addictive and not warning you of the possibility of it. And that it's as simple as that. And so I think they had a real big issue.
Now, one of the warnings regarding the regulation of social media is the age verification thing that is going on, because it's already a fact in Australia. They are imposing it in UK, and there are suggestions to start doing it in the European Union as well, with the 16-year. You can't be on social media unless you're 16 years old. And the downside with that is, but now you have to identify yourself.
That's the
problem. So that part of the legislation, I don't think has anything to do with addictiveness to social media or what's on social media. It's the government wanting to know who you are and what you're searching for and what your hobbies are and stuff like that.
Well, that's kind of, that's been pretty common, using things which do exist and are a giant problem.
Everybody thinks of the children.
For the purpose of it. In the early aughts, it was terrorism. If we need to track everybody and get everybody's information because, of terrorism. And if you didn't agree with it, does that mean you support terrorism? Now it has shifted to CP. There are bad things happening to kids. And if you don't ask for everybody's ID, then that means you want bad things to happen to kids. So that's been, I think, used for a while to get more information. But I'm also not going to say that there isn't a problem with CP going around on the internet. That is absolutely true at the same time.
The issue here, because we have the data retention directive and everything over here, which mandates every your phone company, your internet company, to keep everything you do for at least 6 months. Just in case they want to look at it. And now it's going into what we call chat control. Is now we want a backdoor into the social media companies, so we can, via AI or something, listen to you in real time just to make sure you're not kiddie fiddling. And all of a sudden you have the presumption of innocence, due process, all around that. And also, one of the few actual foundational laws in the European Union is the government cannot look into you unless there is probable cause. But that has been circumvented for decades now. Now, in Sweden, they can put surveillance on you if you have a relationship with somebody accused of a crime.
But that would make sense. It's called, well, here we'd call that what's known as reasonable suspicion. So it makes sense that if you're a mob boss and you're talking to the mob boss, we can limit in a limited way, watch you to make sure that you see what relationship you have to our target. And if you're someone who's involved, then it broadens to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we had the wiretapping in the FBI to where they wiretap a lot of locations. And technically, you're supposed to listen for a second and say, okay, they're talking about picking up lunch. You better hang up.
Yeah.
Stop monitoring or whatever it is.
But here it is enough for you to be a work colleague.
Well,
it's a just in case.
Because I think it all depends on the context of it too. Because work colleague, it all depends on what type of work we do it, right?
Yeah.
But you know what?
And everybody is. I mean, in principle, if let's say I have a cousin who is a suspect of a crime, then they can survey me, and also that means that your speech will be surveilled.
All right. Well, let's shift to the
conversion
the next
therapy
Supreme Court case, which actually should fit in really well because I think that Sweden is held up as an example for how do I put it? Open views towards gender situation. So, Nate, can you tell us about the case?
So this case has been reported wrong in the media. It was reported that the Supreme Court overturned the law, and so I'm going to start from scratch. So this case is about conversion therapy and whether conversion therapy would fall under the First Amendment protection of freedom of speech, or if conversion therapy is a medical procedure.
So what is conversion therapy? Start with that.
Yeah. Well, so conversion therapy is taking someone and changing their what they identify as. If you identify as if you want to be gay, then you'll turn you straight. If you're trans, then it'll turn you straight. Or it can go the opposite way. Somebody who identifies as straight, you can convert them to being gay. But generally, conversion therapy is only thought of as trying to convert people who are gay to people who are straight. Even though it can go both ways, but that's generally what we're talking about. Now, conversion therapy it was found to be harmful, not be effective. There was a whole bunch of horror shows with conversion therapy back in the days, and it's been well studied. So it was essentially banned as a medical procedure. Conversion therapy was banned as a medical procedure. So in most states, there's laws against it because of the harm it was doing to people who were in the therapy. Not everybody was harmed. There were some success stories, but generally it happened not to be.
Could effective. It also be seen as a non sexual example? A lot of people who are left-handed were forced to do everything right-handed with the idea of converting them into a right-handed person like the rest of society for a while.
Isn't
that kind of a similar principle.
It would be similar, but conversion therapy. But I want to make it very clear. Conversion therapy is specifically for changing someone's gender, someone's sexual orientation.
Okay.
Someone's sexual orientation. But so in this particular case, the court, the U.S. District Court. So this is in Colorado. Both the state courts said, well, let me go back. So there was a conversion therapy. A religious group was doing these conversion therapies. The state stepped in and said, you can't do these therapies. They're illegal and they're medical procedures. So they banned them. So they went to the court and said, well, hey, this is our First Amendment right, both religion and free speech. So under Colorado said that they're regulating professional conduct of therapists. And this is not protected speech, but like just any other medical procedure. And the states could regulate medical procedures. And as a source for that, you have Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was overturned, allowing the states to regulate that medical procedure and even ban it if they want. So the state, so
Before
that
it
so
got
that was
overturned again, right? Or no, sorry. Never
Roe
mind,
v.
go on.
Wade. Yeah, Roe v.
Yeah,
Wade.
yeah,
Roe v.
it
Wade
was
was overturned,
yeah.
giving the states the ability to regulate that medical procedure. So, so obviously, so it went to the court, and the Supreme Court, they upheld. So the law is still upheld, but the standard in which the court used to come to its conclusion had to be changed. So there are, in the United States, we have what's known as the tiers of scrutiny when it comes to constitutional cases. The highest tiers was called strict scrutiny. So if Congress or any state passes a law that says Black people can only drive on Tuesdays and white people could drive on Wednesdays, that would be strict scrutiny because that's a law that defines people based on race. So the court would have to have a, they call it compelling government interest to say why that's necessary, right? It can't just be we just did it. And then on the lowest scale of that, it's what's called rational basis. That's if there's any rational basis that the court can think about, or even the court can't think about, but somebody else can think about, then the law will be good. And those cases generally have to do. Sometimes you'll see cases in which there was one about commercial vehicles, for instance, in New York City, and non-commercial vehicles. So the court said, yeah, if you have any rational basis to regulate commercial vehicles, then it's not just because you're distinguishing between the two doesn't mean that the state is wrong. So the state in this particular case, because it had to do with medical procedures, said we're going to evaluate. The courts in the state said we're evaluating this under rational basis because the state has the authority to do this. The Supreme Court came back and said, well, no, you can't evaluate this under rational basis because the therapy itself invokes the First Amendment. It's speech, right? These people are religious people. They're doing this therapy, and it's under and they're doing it under both the First Amendment free speech and the First Amendment religion. So that automatically triggers a strict scrutiny analysis. You have to now analyze this under the most strictest rules that we have to do it. So the Supreme Court sent it back and said, you used the wrong test to make this analysis. You have to use the higher test. And if it passes, then it'll be good. But if it doesn't, then obviously it's bad. So they sent it back. Now, there was one dissenting opinion, which was
Jackson again.
Ketanji Brown Jackson. And what she said is that this is clearly, you have to be licensed to be a therapist. It's a medical procedure. It's a well-known medical procedure. All other medical procedures are rational basis, right? So if that's the case, then why separate this one just like the other ones? It just doesn't make any sense. Why are we separating this one out when all these other ones? But the counter argument to Jackson is that, and this is essentially the conservatives argument, which I am more sympathetic to. I just want to make it very clear.
Oh, you are. I think you shifted.
Well, no, I'm more. I'm into this argument. That I'm bringing now. So they were saying that take this particular example. If a young boy comes to you, a young person comes up to a parent or a doctor and says, "Hey, I feel like I am gay or I am trans." That person can help you convert them or help them through that process into realizing their who they really are, if they're gay or they're trans or whatever, right? Essentially, it's conversion, but it's kind of like this acceptable conversion that we take someone who is confused about their gender identity now or their sexual orientation now, and then we'll convert them to what we feel they should be or what they feel they should be. But if we take that in reverse and have someone who is gay who now says that same thing, then that conversion therapy would be illegal, right? Because you're converting somebody from gay to straight is illegal, but from straight to gay is not illegal. So that's kind of the inconsistency. So the Supreme Court is kind of saying, well, if you're going to do this shit, do it all across the board, but make it to the highest standard possible, which is strict scrutiny. You can do it, but we just want to be very careful on that. If you're going to do it, it's going to be done under these conditions. So where Ketanji Brown Jackson, I think, still wants that carve out for conversion therapy, that, hey, we're going to ban it all across the board. I think the court is thinking of the broader issues of, hey, this is actually not just one way that it's happening. It's happening in both in two separate situations. I know somebody also in the chat is saying it's not a medical procedure, but they're licensed therapists. It's considered a medical procedure, so that's why the state was going this route. So I agree with, in this particular case, I do agree with the Supreme Court. I do think this should be held under strict scrutiny, because it's not about the therapy, but the type of therapy, and then you have it. So what do you guys think?
I'm going to defer to Nik on this one.
Well, over here, again, a bit of fun history. In 1979, homosexuality was a diagnosis of a mental illness over here, until a group of activists called in sick to work, saying they felt gay. And that spread, and which forced the medical institutions to, oh shit, we need to. So not long after this started to happen, okay, we cannot actually have this as a medical diagnosis. It falls on its face of reason.
It's funny how when principles hit cash or the bottom line, how strong they are, seems to come out.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nik.
Now, when it comes to conversion therapy, since being gay, trans, is not a medical illness here, you can't have a conversion therapy because it's not a medical diagnosis. In that regard, it still can be a diagnosis, but not an illness. Therefore, no treatment. So conversion therapy in itself is not regulated, since it's not regarded as a treatable thing.
Well, let me interrupt you, because the issue so this was the issue. Does the state law prohibiting particularly only licensed professionals, from engaging in talk-based therapy with the minors to convert them, does that violate free speech? So the government's argument here is that we're regulating licensed professionals. So in other words, you can't do this because we're licensing you under this license. If you want to do it without a license, fine. But then you have all those other horror shows. But if you want to do this licensed under the state, we're regulating your license.
Well, over here, there's no prohibition from licensed therapists to act, but they can't do it under government regulations because it's not a treatable diagnosis. So they can still do it, but they don't have the protections. I mean, you still have, because the protections under the law is one thing, but you don't have protections because you for insurance, for example.
Well, let me play this out then, just so I understand, Nik. So over there, let's say you have a situation where somebody, they're gay and they say, I want to be straight. So they go to a therapist, and the therapist works with them and talks to them and everything else. And then that same person ultimately takes their own life down the road because they're still upset it didn't happen, and they found out everything was wrong. Would the therapist be potentially liable? Is that what you mean by no protections? Okay.
They don't have protection. And then now other laws come in place as unlawful coercion, illegal threats. So then you go into that type of legislation, but that goes under the criminal assault statutes.
Okay.
But so, Nik, I would like to ask you this, because in this particular case, the issue here was that the therapy was talk-based. There was nothing else. He said, I sit in the chair and we just talk. And they're saying, because since I'm just talking to you and it's only talk, that triggers freedom of speech, even as a licensed professional.
Yeah, we don't have freedom of speech.
Well, there you go.
We don't have the First Amendment.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't have to apply that to this. It's, say, in the situation where a gay person, I want to be straight, you have this person trying to talk them into being straight, but it ends up in self-harm. Now it's a criminal investigation. So free speech does not apply. Now, extremely rare. Now this conversion therapy over here, mostly in very limited religious cults, which has more or less where you are, this gayness is, it's demonic possession. Let's get with bleach. I mean, you have truly horrific cases here where bleach was involved. And those parents who took their priest of sort, who orchestrated all of this, injuring those children to the extent, it's absolutely horrifying. They are all in prison now, and the kids are somewhat safe. But just the speech-based, it's very rare that this, even if it's a criminal investigation, that it leads to anything, because it's hard to prove where did this come from. The choice to self-end is not criminalized here.
No,
it's still a choice.
Well, you have tourism from that there?
It has to reach the level of illegal coercion.
Hold on. Do you have tourism for it there, or is it Switzerland? And I feel terrible because for some reason, SW just means
a self-ending thing. It's Switzerland.
Switzerland. Okay.
Over here, it's illegal to aid in self-ending.
Okay.
Assisted,
well,
like co-working.
Assisted self-ending is illegal here.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was one of those, and I wanted to make sure I got it right, which I just find so.
Also, an interesting
disturbing.
case a few years ago. On more or less the darker sides of the internet, there is a guy who they are desperately trying to stop helping people to self-end. It's basically a serial killer who found a way to find these people, vulnerable people, already wanting to self-end, and he drives them over the edge. There are reportedly between 20 and 30 cases.
Wow.
But they have currently, he's been in and out of jail and prison for the past 5 to 7 years, but they can't put him on the red drum scale.
Hold on, you remind me of a case, and I don't know if either of you have heard of this one. I think it was in Germany, but it was very, very disturbing, where one person was a cannibal, and another person wanted to self-end, I guess is the term now. And they had a deal. The one person fulfilled their end, and the second person got his meal. And all they could really prosecute the person on was how a corpse was handled. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was. It's one of these disturbing edge cases that I kind of am going, how is this even possible? But and everybody go look this up, because it is a real case and a real crazy situation.
So,
here you go. Wolf Wisdom. My body is your communion. That's taking it a little bit far. I don't mean this to be a disturbing Easter topic. Anyway, All right, so Nate, I guess let's roll into the last story. Not much to say here. I'm kind of happy to, admittedly on the other show, Mark and I on America's Untold Stories have been griping about Pam Bondi. I mean, almost since she went into office. I mean, I don't think she was in office for a month before she did her little binder stunt with the Epstein files. And I think the whole Epstein situation has been exacerbated a lot by her own actions. But I'd love to hear from both of you. What are your thoughts on the illustrious Pam Bondi being fired?
It's Trump's choice. He can do what he wants. I mean, do I believe that she, with the Epstein files and everything, that she did a bad job? Yeah, but ultimately, she is appointed by him. He can put a foot to her ass and say, now you're out, in with the next one. So I really, by principle or by law, do I care? No, it's because it's his choice. He's the president. He appoints people, he kicks them out. Does it look good? Does it look bad? It's all in the eye of the beholder. But technically, yeah, I won't miss her. What can I say?
I appreciate the pragmatic view, but I'm just going to say it just plainly. Pam Bondi was a disgrace. She's like,
thank you.
and I'm just going to say this: a lot of her issues were kind of self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have to go and give the binders to the influencers to make them seem like that she was releasing something. Then then the binders were full of nothing, right? And that made them look bad. That made those influencers look bad. And let's not talk about the whole. I got the Epstein file right on my desk right now. Matter of fact, I got the list on my desk right now, waiting to review it. Blah 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 blah. She didn't have to say that. She didn't have to say that the missing minute was deleted because of the system, and then a couple of weeks later, oh, guess what? We found the missing minute. Yeah, it was actually not just one; it was 3 minutes missing, right? And on and on and on it goes. And then I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when she was at the Congress last time. She's talking about, look at the 50,000 stock exchange. Everything's up. Everything looks good.
The Dow. Yeah,
look at the Dow.
Somebody made a song out of it.
And then you got all the Epstein victims that they haven't spoken to yet. They can tell you who the hell was doing what to them. Mm-hmm. She hasn't spoken to them yet, and she couldn't even look at them. So I think when you put everything up together, she couldn't, like, even cases that were easy walks that we thought were easy became these big show trials, and we're hiring these DEI. Trump is hiring these DEI lawyers who are not qualified, and then they got the judges kicking them out. It just was a disaster.
Even Letitia James, he couldn't get a damn grand jury to go on that. I mean,
it was like how clean could this be? So I will not miss Pam Bondi, but I do think this also goes to a deeper problem, because we can't forget, this is not like just one person. Kristi Noem too.
Oh, I'm good with that.
How much of a disaster was she? And her husband's running around with fake boobs, and she's sleeping with Corey Lewandowski. Yeah. So I don't know. I think last term, Trump hired a lot of those in-house people. The DC establishment.
Yeah, the deep state.
Now
he found idiots.
And now I think he's trying to say, I'm going to keep people like RFK. I'm going to put people in there who's going to make some of the changes, who are going to at least challenge the deep state in these positions. But I think in his haste to do that, he hired people who were just incompetent. And Pam Bondi was incompetent. And what's her name was incompetent. And he's hired some people who are competent. But I think it's now starting to become overshadowed. And obviously the stuff with Iran is not helping either. So Pam Bondi, I think it's one thing. It's funny because even her law school is coming out to condemn her, because they're saying that it's one thing to make a mistake, but it seems like Pam Bondi was out there inherently and trying to mislead the public, because every time I have so many clips of her saying one thing and a couple of days saying the exact opposite or pretending she didn't say it. And I think when you lose the trust of the public that way, I think the president kind of has no point, because she lost all of MAGA.
Trump.
Well, yeah. Who does she think she is? Trump. She lost all of MAGA though. I don't know anybody on the MAGA side who is pro Pam Bondi. You know, I just don't know. If maybe there might be somebody out there, but maybe
there were
in the chat, maybe pro Pam Bondi.
There were problems with Pam Bondi being selected early on, because a lot of people from Florida who were NRA came out and said she's been an enemy to the NRA, and that was NRA is something that most MAGA holds up as a good thing. National Rifle Association. So her history with the NRA was a little weird. There's some mass shooting stuff that happened with her that was a little bit weird. There is a bit of a Scientology little rubbing there. I'm not going to say she's a Scientologist, but there's some interesting relationships there. There were some interesting pharmaceutical ties that were there with her. So there was some baggage with Pam Bondi from the get-go that people in Florida who knew her, were complaining. They're like, oh, no, not this person. We know this person. Do not do it. Do not do it. But again, people say that Mark and I say that Trump could do nothing wrong. That's not true. The guy is not the one you want to have running your HR department. Okay.
No.
It is the height of irony that the guy who, got even more famous by having a show all about hiring and firing people has one of the worst records out there for some of the employees he has picked over time. And there's a long list of them. I'm sorry. He really should have somebody who helps him with that particular task, in my opinion.
Yeah. But I think she's loyal to a fault too. I think Pam Bondi, she's loyal and
which is good.
And I like the fact that because again, I think when it comes to Epstein and all that stuff, I do think, to be fair to Pam, she was put in a bad spot. Because I think she went in there just like, and so I think she went in there, Patel went in there, and Bongino went in there thinking one thing: we're just going to go in there, look at files, and just release them to everybody, right? We're going to show everybody what's going on.
All right.
But when you got in there, and again, I have no evidence for this, so this is just my opinion. I think when you got in there, the problem is that the names on that list of whatever was happening with Epstein, that blackmail material, that's what I'm calling it, is more valuable to keep secret, to continue to use it against these people, than to put it out there and expose them, because it loses all of that value.
Like what happened with John Bolton, right?
Yes, exactly. With Iran was holding that, and then when we found out, we held it for 4 years, right? Because we didn't want them to know that we knew. Just so everybody with John Bolton, Iran hacked Bolton's emails and found out that he was spreading national secrets for his book thing. So, but the U.S. then broke into Iran.
Found out. Yeah.
But then they were like, yo, we're not going, if we arrest Bolton, then they're going to know that we're in their system. So they kind of let Bolton just hang out there for all this time. But then when Trump came in, Trump was like, we got another plan for Iran. So that's why they were able to indict Bolton.
Well, it was after we already bombed them. So
yeah.
It even played out that particular op. So it's like, okay, now we can prosecute the guy, no problem. And by the way, I understand everything you're saying, Nate. My issue is not that, it's the binders on my desk.
Yes.
The influencers.
Yes.
I know every name. And then changing up the story. All she had to say is, we are investigating things very seriously. We just got here. Kick it down the road. Stop mouthing off. Stop saying stupid things and just do your job.
It could have took years to investigate this. Hey, we're going to get the files out. Hey, we're looking at people right now. Right? As soon as they say we're investigating in a criminal matter, we know that. Like, look at Tiffany Henyard. That can take years. It's 4 years they still investigating her, and we all know she's guilty.
And she's running for office.
Yeah. So it's like, and even with Trump, they were hitting him up years and years and years. But instead of, I think, playing that game, they tried to play the game of, hey, we're going to release everything. We released everything, and people are too stupid to know that we really didn't release everything. And I think that was the problem. What were you going to say, Nick?
Now I'm just, I mean, when it comes, don't treat your public office as a damn YouTube channel. Cash Patel, shut the F up.
Oh God,
You're
Don't get me started.
ruining investigations. Seriously. When he, with the Tyler Robinson,
The Charlie Kirk when he said we got him, and then he's
Yeah.
like, no, we didn't get him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he went there. Oh, I need a jacket. Okay, now they have to defer officers to get him a jacket because he wanted a photo op. Pissing me off.
I
In
agree.
office, I want gray, boring people who do their job.
Yeah, you know what? As a matter of fact, Mark and I have talked about this, and I'm sorry, but you know, Trump and I are kind of saying no more beauty queens for a while. We want an Alan Dershowitz to be attorney general, somebody like that, somebody that nobody's going to question, or how about a Janet Reno? There, I'm going to give a Democrat callback. Nobody's going to get confused about why Janet Reno was picked for attorney general. It wasn't because of pageantry. Let's put it that way. So I think that, you know, and Trump, I mean, who was it? The one he picked to bring charges against Comey, another beauty queen. He has a habit of doing that. And it's like, oh, nobody's taking you seriously. Again, that's a part that
bring back but ugly people in government.
The NRA has become very unpopular for people who want to defend gun rights because of their repeated deliberate failures to uphold those rights. I think the NRA, to be fair, I think the NRA they're on the front lines. Whenever they sniff out anything about gun rights, they're on it. So maybe you're right. Maybe they haven't been as active, but what do you guys think? Do you guys think the NRA?
I thought they went bankrupt.
Yeah, I think they were going bankrupt at a time, but I'm talking about when they were at their peak. Well, I'm saying even a couple of years ago, the NRA was the people holding the line when it becomes this 2A.
They were very good for a while, and Adam Carolla had a great analogy comparing the smoking lobby, as if there was a smoking lobby, with the NRA, and talking about like how restaurants were in California. And he was saying, you know, the NRA is like, no, hell no. I don't care if it's a machine gun, assault weapon, rocket launcher. I don't care. Guns. No, hell no. And they will not, you know, they would not deviate from it versus the smokers who would be like, oh, okay. So we can have our own section. Oh, okay. No problem. Oh, now you got to be outside. Oh, okay. Now they're outside. And then, oh no, you need to be over there across the parking lot. Oh, okay. So he drew this parallel there. I think NRA has been weakened. They don't seem to have as much power. And Nate, you can answer this because aren't they headquartered in New York? And weren't they at risk in New York because New York is attacking them? They're trying to move out of New York and establish somewhere else.
Yeah, from what I remember, there was like some issue about their status as not for profit, so they moved to Texas because there was some issues. So yeah, I'd have to look up. But I think at the end of the day, though, even if they're not around, I haven't looked at their recent stats, but I think they're still around. And yeah, I just recently got a call from them to re-up my membership. So I don't know. I think when it comes to certain issues like Second Amendment, I think the NRA, it's good to have, but I think sometimes they get a little too crazy with we want anybody just to go to a gun store and buy a gun. I think that's too extreme.
Yeah, but that's
background checks.
Yeah,
they can
wait with that ban until after I get to the United States and get my guns. Then you can ban anything you want.
All right.
No, I think it's the anchoring, you know, stance, because if you do the whole, oh, let me come in with the reasonable ask, it's going to be somewhere less than that reasonable ask. So if you come in a little bit unreasonable, hopefully you can compromise on the reasonable.
To where you're at. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a great point. Bondi asks to be fired. That is not this is not true at all.
Well, that's not what's being reported.
Any of the reports. All the reports said she begged to stay.
Well, hold on. He may be saying her actions were her asking to be fired. She deserved it. She asked for it.
You know, let me read the whole thing. Bondi asked to be fired. She knew too much about who knows what and didn't want to take down Trump's friends. Possibly. I do think again, my issue with Bondi is that she didn't have to say the thing she said.
Yes.
And she would have been all right. If she said, hey, we got a whole bunch of information here, 3 million documents. I got people looking at it, and we're going to be bringing charges as soon as we have something. And you go through the motions. We're going to talk to every one of the victims. And we'd be sitting there, and I have people, what is it? I send 2 or 3 people. Yeah, you talk to all these victims, get statements. We're going to do everything. How many years and years and years is that going to take, right?
Yeah.
But instead of doing it that way, giving yourself more time, she tried to make it seem like she was presenting something, and she wasn't. And then it became a scam. So
my issue with her, Nate, is she was too busy looking for a camera versus a case.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
You know, her desk might as well have been at Fox News versus in DOJ. Now, I'm going to run a parallel here. Bobby Kennedy, you brought up earlier, right?
Yeah.
How about Tulsi Gabbard? I'm going to bring both of them. How often do we hear from Bobby Kennedy on Fox News and Tulsi Gabbard on Fox News? They're kind of busy doing their job. Pam Bondi is always out there. Look at me, look at me, look at me, drawing attention to herself. Christy Nome, same thing. Her little
$200 million
ad campaign, and look at me. Let me put the uniform on. I'm a super cop, and I'm a a bitch boss. Is kind of the whole thing she was trying to do, and that's what is infuriating. If they're just doing their damn job, like Bobby Kennedy. I mean, hell, Marco Rubio probably has less time on air than freaking Pam Bondi. And is he known for it? No, he's known for doing his job. Everybody is known for doing their job except for Pam Bondi and Christy Nome. Yeah. Those are the top 2, in my opinion, who were more busy trying to get a magazine cover or a camera than actually performing a task. And that's my opinion.
But the positive with Pam Bondi is, without her incompetence, how much would we have known about the Epstein files? But I mean, she released, and then by incompetence, you actually didn't release everything.
But everything that she put out was already released, Nick. We already knew. It wasn't like she gave us no real elimination.
But and the one thing she did release new stuff. She released, like, for instance, all the victims'
But she brought
names.
up the expectations of more.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah. But I think it's so insidious that what happened, because she had redacted the names of all the people who were doing things with children, but then released all the names of the victims, because there's an email that said, here are the names of all the alleged victims. Here, make sure we redact these names. And they put the email that the lawyer sent in the Justice Department, they released unredacted. So it was almost like this was meant to be exactly the opposite of what it is. So I don't know. I just think the country is better today without Pam Bondi as Attorney General.
100%. The only issue I have is, why did it take this long?
Oh,
because she's embarrassing. No. I know that he's
went from
worried
useful
about
idiot to an idiot.
Yeah. Well, happy to see. Goodbye. Don't let the door hit you in the ass. And actually, that's a perfect point to wrap up on. I think, Nate. What do you think?
Yeah. I'm. Everything is good. I got. Well, for me personally, coming up, I think I have like a couple of. I think I'm looking here. You have a couple of videos coming out. Tiffany Hinyard is now under investigation in Georgia because they want to figure out how the hell is she registering to vote in Georgia, but still the active mayor and superintendent in Illinois. So the Board of Elections came out and said, none of this makes sense. We gotta figure out whether she is, and she is because the election is in May, where she will be representing the Republican Party. So that full-on investigation is happening. So we'll see what happens there. And there's a couple other little cases. Another something that was really interesting. I haven't really gotten you guys' opinion on, but I was thinking about it. I was going to go into there's this. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. There was like another little case that occurred. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up. You know what? I'll wait till next week and do it. But there was something else I wanted to ask you guys about, but I can't find it. It was like a little weird. It was a weird little case. You know what? When I'll find it,
that's a
I'll say
tease.
that. It is a tease
for next
But
time.
you guys know what the type of cases I like. I like those cases that have high hypocrisy, where somebody's doing some stuff. I'm trying to but when I find out, I'll let you know. Nick, what you got coming up?
Yeah.
Oh, I have 5 p.m. today. It's the Slightly Buzzed show, where grab a drink of choice and then talk about light-hearted subjects like Letitia Stout getting a new trial. And she should, because somehow the judge allowed the father-in-law of an employee of the sitting DA to be on the jury. Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah,
And he knew it?
The juror brought it up himself. Yeah, my nephew works for the guy who's prosecuting the case. And the judge, yeah, I don't think this is constitutional. As the Colorado Appeals Court said, oh, hell yeah, it is.
Oh yeah, that was the case. The Colorado Tina Peters, but
wow. Okay, well that judge, in my opinion, wanted Tina Peters so bad that the whole judgment against her was egregious. And I think
they upheld the conviction, but changed the sentencing. So she's still a convicted felon, but they're changing the sentencing because
hopefully the time served at least, so she can go.
Yeah, it's got to. They maxed her out. But go ahead, Nick. We're sorry for cutting you off.
We're also going to talk about this serial pregnancy scammer Laura Owen's attorney David S. Gingras, who is facing disciplinary actions from the state bar, and he is not too happy about it, let's just say that. So he's trying to subpoena the judge in the Laura Owens prior case and the judge's father for every piece of information and he brought it to the judge's dad. You shall appear on March 9th, and he served him March 9th, 8:30 p.m.
Wow.
And this is a licensed attorney, David S. Gingras. And he's now he's only trying to postpone everything. But I think he's now motion to compel number 7 or 8. Where he tries to get the state bar to compel the judge's dad to hand over discovery, even though there's already been an investigation clearing both the judge and the dad of misconduct. Yeah, it's an absolutely insane situation. And then, of course, the Rick Allen appeal is ongoing. The Delphi case, the double homicide, where I am convinced he is wrongfully convicted. And even if I believed he did it, what the state did to him, 13 months solitary confinement.
All right, so Nick has a lot coming up.
So very light-hearted the subject today on the Slightly Buzzed show.
Awesome. Very good. Quick wrap-up. I have America's Untold Stories coming up at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And yes, you guessed it. We will be crowing about Pam Bondi being fired, among other news topics that have come up for today. Obviously, a jet was shot down over Iran. Artemis 2 is in space. New York is being run into the ground by a communist, and all the other good news that is fit to vent on America's Untold Stories Freeform Friday. Hope to see you all then. And
before we go, Nick, you made an appearance on a video that did really well for me. So you made an appearance on my Afro Man video.
Oh,
because you were in the chat. So you know how they the defense attorneys were interviewing the attorney and the thing, and you put a super chat in.
Yeah.
So your chat came up in my video for the thing. So yeah. So
Hey!
he was in the chat. What did you think about that conversation? So just so everybody understands where we're at. There's two defense attorneys from that area. They had both Afro Man's attorney on and one of the anonymous jurors on. And they were talking about the case and how they believe the judge was biased. And Afro Man's attorney said that his biggest issue, or that the biggest scare, the thing he was most afraid about, was the P issue. The when he called the cop the P, right?
Yeah.
So what did you think about that interview?
It was so fun. What that he mixes his looks with his laid-back attitude and absolutely sharp intellect. I mean, if I were in that area making ruckus, I would choose that attorney in a heartbeat.
Well, that's good advertising for him. But unfortunately, right now we definitely have to go. Don't forget, Eric. You got your what time's the show tonight?
5:30 p.m. Eastern.
5:30 p.m. Eastern. And Nick, do you have anything going on tonight?
5 p.m. Eastern. Slightly Buzzed show.
Boom, boom, boom. So we will all see you guys later. Thanks again for stopping by, and we are out of here.